NFL free agency is right around the corner. What should the Bengals do to become Super Bowl contenders once again? That's next on Enter the Jungle. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to Enter the Jungle. I'm James Rapien alongside Andrew Fox Miller, and this is Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Enter the Jungle airs every single Tuesday at 8 Eastern and throughout the week on Bally Sports. We're part of the Big Play Network, and well, later in the show, you're going to hear from our friends at Big Play, and we're going to make fun of them. So until then, though, we're going to talk about all things Bengals free agency because it's a huge offseason for the Bengals, and the legal tampering period, which is essentially free agency. It's when teams can agree to deals with players, starts on Monday, March 11th at noon. So that's when the Bengals can make a run at your favorite free agent that you want them to get. And over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to fix the Bengals and get them right and get the roster back to Super Bowl contention around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And by the way, free agency itself begins on Wednesday, March 13th, when the new league year begins. But you can agree to deals before then, and the Bengals certainly will. And Andrew, let's dive into their biggest needs, because to me, it has to start with the trenches. Do you agree? Offensive tackle, defensive tackle? I think that's where everybody's focus is right now.
100% agree. So much so that I find myself constantly wondering which one I would prioritize over the other. It's very difficult. So yes, they're lumped together in this giant priority, singular priority, two different position groups.
Let's start with offensive tackle because it's such a thought throughout Cincinnati and for Bengals fans everywhere with Joe Burrow, who continues to rehab his wrist and things are going in the right direction. And he should be good to go at some point this offseason to start throwing and hopefully looks like the Joe we remember. But let's get into protecting him. I want them to add a proven veteran regardless. Everyone talks about how great this draft class is. That's fine. I can't control the draft if I'm the Bengals. But you know what they can control? They can, to a certain extent at least, control who they sign in free agency. They have to do this, right? They have to sign a veteran right tackle.
Not only do I think they have to your point, if this NFL draft class is as deep as they're saying, in theory, that might make things a little bit, I don't know, frustrating in the free agent class that's out there this year, right? Because now the market might be a little bit more, palatable for someone that could be a reliable starting tackle in this league. So get that established player there, go into that deep draft, grab yourself someone. I don't see how that's not achievable. That should be absolutely achievable.
My first call at noon as part of the legal tampering period, noon on Monday, I would call Tyron Smith. That would be my guy. That would be the guy that I would go after. And he's 33 years old. He was in AJ Green's draft class. He hasn't played a full season in multiple years, Andrew. People are going to look up his stats and say 13 games played. No, we need durability. We need youth. No, you know what you need? You need a ring. That's what the Bengals should be in the business to do, is get a ring. And the reason I would call Tyron Smith, and I wrote about this last week for All Bengals, it's pretty simple. Best option available, relationship with Frank Pollock, who everybody on social media hates, but relationships matter, and would easily come in and be the best option realistically that the Bengals are going to pursue at right tackle. Outside of some kind of trade that I don't foresee or don't know about, that would be the guy. And he wouldn't, because of his age, prevent you from drafting a right tackle early if you like one in this draft class. That would be my go-to. I think he shoots it down, by the way, but that would be my first option. And then let me get to the guy that I think they ultimately end up with, and a guy I would sign if I'm the Bengals. And he was floated around at the combine. One person mentioned him to me, and then suddenly multiple people are mentioning him. And I don't know if it was just a bunch of parroting, right? And by people, I mean reporters. It's not like Bengals personnel was coming up to me like, hey, we're going to sign this free agent. I'm not saying that. But doesn't Mekhi Becton make sense? He's not even 25 years old yet. He's a former first-round pick. He's had injury issues. He's projected to make a whopping $5 million this year, according to Brad Spielberger of Pro Football Focus, who does a good job of forecasting contracts for free agents. And there's a relationship with Frank Pollock. He was good with Frank, by the way, his first year with the Jets, has dealt with some injuries. I would go after Mekhi Becton because I think he's got plenty of untapped potential. There's an injury history there, but he's also not going to cost a lot. So of these big mammoth tackles, I think he's near the top of my list.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's near the top of the Bengals list, regardless of what I think or you think. I mean, I just feel like, to your point, first round pedigree, youth is a big
Yep,
factor.
no
And
doubt.
again, deep draft class 2024. That's an interesting dynamic, having him in there who's now finally played a season in the NFL, and you're rotating in somebody that's young and can actually, like, by the end of the season, that draft pick could be the starter. But worst case scenario, Becton can do it. I mean, he finally has proven he can, and it's going to be an interesting price for him. I don't know. We'll see with this free agent class.
You're right, because he has the size, he has the athleticism. He's one of those guys that wowed at the combine a few years ago. And so I could totally see a team going in on him. But I think you brought up a really good point earlier. The fact that there's so many offensive linemen in this draft class, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be rushing to sign Becton.
Right.
And that's why it might be perfect. And you couple that with the fact that Duke Tobin just mentioned, if there's a guy that maybe needs to rebuild his career, like Becton fits that build. He fits the age part of it, because I like a Jermaine Illuminor and the possibility of signing him too. The Raiders offensive tackle has guard experience. So if you draft a tackle, you could move him as a backup guard or start him at guard if you needed to. The problem is he's 29.
Right.
And the Bengals care about age. They do. And it's worked for them over the past couple of years. They like the second contract guys. And so to me, I think Mekhi Becton is probably near the top of their list. And if they get it done and they sign Mekhi Becton next week, I would be in on that if they add him in free agency. Andrew, let's get to defensive tackle, because defensive tackle is one that's talked about a ton. I think it is their biggest need overall, because you need multiple. And let's just assume they don't re-sign DJ Reader, because obviously everyone wants DJ Reader back. They could certainly re-sign him. But when I look at this market, it's tough because these top guys, they don't have age on their side. DJ Reader's 29. A lot of these guys are in that 29 range. And so what do you think they do at defensive tackle in free agency?
If they're agreeing to a short-term 1, maybe 2-year deal, okay. But yeah, to your point, like that, I was just looking through that. Even if you look at like PFF's top 10 available defensive tackles, of those top 10, 5 of them are in their age 30 year or 30 and over. So I think the Bengals absolutely need to address it in free agency. I think they're going to also have to turn to the draft. But I think that ultimately who they get, I don't know. I mean, you look at the past years, the people that they've gotten in free agency, BJ Hill, Tupou, Ogunjobi, these are all younger, mid-20s guys at the time they sign them. There's not quite that guy here, unless you're seeing someone.
No, I think you're right. That's what they've tried to do. Like the Larry Ogunjobi contract, that would be the ideal one.
Right.
And it's tough. I do think that there are some names out there. And ultimately, I think that they'll make calls on the top guys and then realize that it's probably not going to work and try to do what they did at corner. I've said this a ton this offseason. What they did at corner in 2021, where they lose William Jackson III, and then they split that money up and get Mike Hilton and Chidobe Awuzie. I think they'll try to do that. So some guys that they could do that with. If they're worried about age, Javon Kinlaw doesn't have the production, but he is 26 years old. They could go that route out of San Francisco. I wouldn't, but they certainly could. I don't really care as much about age here. You're signing these guys to be good now. But another guy that fits that age mold, and they claimed him, they put in a waiver claim at the end of last season, and the Texans had higher priority because of a weird tiebreaker. But Tier Tart from the Titans, he's 27 years old, gives them some juice pass rush wise. I certainly think they could be in on him. Sheldon Rankins is someone they've expressed interest in, but he's 30. And so they were interested in him 4 years ago. Are they still interested in him now? I think he could help them. Grover Stewart is the one. If they don't bring back DJ Reader, even if they do, but to me, Grover Stewart, he's 30. He can come in and be that AFC North nose tackle to an extent. He's played pretty well, been pretty consistent, and that's what you need. You need to raise the floor of that defensive line because it got beaten up And so if I, we're Duke Tobin or the Bengals front office, I think a Grover Stewart, Sheldon Rankins combo, Grover Stewart, Tierra Tart, Grover Stewart, maybe you go after a Daquan Jones, who's a little longer in the tooth, 32 years old, even Grover Stewart, Maurice Hurst. Then you're getting a pass rusher along with like a nose tackle plus BJ Hill. They could also bring back DJ Reader, like I said, in any of those moves. Let's say they sign any of these two guys. It's not going to be to the point where they can't use a rookie in that spot as well in part of a rotation. So I do think that defensive line, offensive line, both of these are going to be in play in the draft, but there are plenty of other positions, plenty of other needs, more so than past years. So up next, the Bengals have questions at tight end. They have questions at safety. Which veterans make the most sense? We'll answer that question on Enter the Jungle. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. He's Andrew Fox Miller. I'm James Rapien. And the Bengals have two key spots they need to fill in free agency. Let's start with tight end, Andrew, because tight end has been such a talking point. Do you think they go out and sign a free agent tight end? Do you think they bring back Drew Sample, Tanner Hudson, and go into the draft needing one? How do you think they approach it?
I mean, I think re-signing any of their guys is always a possibility, of course, and it's probably very likely, to be honest. But you look at the free agents out there, like obviously, like Dalton Schultz is sort of the dream scenario here. I mean, maybe not the big play ability that we maybe like to see, but he's about as reliable as they come and can actually help in the run game, of course. So beyond him, it's Noah Fant, Hunter Henry, and then after that, it's a lot of who do they just really like at that point, right? So I think like these other positions we've been talking about, they're going to have to do something with the draft itself. I would love to see someone that's going to be explosive plays, big plays. You're not going to get that in this free agency that I've seen, aside from taking a gamble on some guys that are maybe less proven that are in free agency right now.
Yeah, the fan pick is Noah Fant. People love the athleticism, first round pedigree, 26 years old. I just wonder if he's got that next step and he's going to be worth the money. If I'm the Bengals, I stay cheap at tight end. Right. I'll be honest, because I'm spending a lot of money in the trenches at offensive and defensive tackle. They obviously have the Joe Burrow contract. They're going to spend a lot of money at receiver. And so Hunter Henry would be my first target. I'm not sure exactly what he would. It doesn't mean you don't call Dalton Schultz. Doesn't mean you don't call Noah Fant. I just think they're going to make more than the Bengals should spend at this point at tight end and allocate that cap money towards. And so if they can get any of those guys, that would work. I think Mike Gesicki could be interesting on a really low end deal. I'm talking 1.5 million, 2 million. His market has pretty much dried up recently, but it would not shock me if they go that route. They sign a mid-tier veteran and bring back Drew Sample, Tanner Hudson, maybe Mitch Wilcox. And that's that until the draft and they see where they're at. Meanwhile, safety is another position that a lot of people are talking about, that a lot of people have discussed. Where does Dax Hill fit? Jordan Battle obviously flashed at the end of his rookie year. I thought Dax Hill flashed throughout his second season, but there were also some low lows, some high highs, some low lows. And that's an analogy that a lot of coaches use. I think it does fit for Dax. And so I could see them going after a free safety. I don't think they're going to spend big money on Antoine Winfield Jr. if he hits the market, or Kyle Duggar, Cameron Curl, Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney's a popular one. Right. Geno Stone's a popular one among Bengals fans. To me, I look at this and I'm like, all right, well, can you get Mike Edwards for cheap? Darnell Savage at 26 years old, almost 27 years old. Will he be on the low end? That's the range that I would be looking at. Just someone that they trust to play deep safety if Dax doesn't figure it out, or if they realize they want to move Dax around, gives them that flexibility to move him around more.
I just want to point this out. Last I looked, Xavier McKinney is a name you mentioned. Pretty sure his agent is one David Mulligetta. We are on watch. I'm just saying we are on watch with David Mulligetta. Noah Fant, also, speaking of tight ends, also one of them. So it just going to put the little asterisk there. Okay.
It backs up my point that I wouldn't swim in the Noah Fant waters. Right. And it really doesn't have to do with him as a player. If I'm spending big money at tight end, I need big production. And it's unproven there. But yeah, I think that they will add a free safety. But does that free safety need to come in and be Jesse Bates? No. And there's a reason they got cheaper at safety last offseason. I think they will continue that trend so they can keep some of their stars and spend resources elsewhere, defensive tackle, offensive tackle. What will they do at running back, Andrew? That is a question that a lot of people have been asking. The Bengals have until the 4th day of the new league year to make a decision on Joe Mixon's future. They can save $6.1 million in cap space from moving on from the 27-year-old. Will they do it? Let's discuss running back and their options coming up next. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. I'm James Rapien. He is Andrew Fox Miller, and you can join us every Tuesday at 8 Eastern on Cincinnati Bengals Talk Weekly, right here on Bally Sports as well. And let's dive in, Andrew, to running back, because it's a great debate. I did a full video on it earlier this week on Cincinnati Bengals Talk with Joe Mixon. The Bengals can save between $5.8 and $6.1 million in cap space if they move on from Joe before the 4th day of the new league year. The new league year starts on March 13th. Let's not even debate whether they should or shouldn't. But when you look at this free agent market, are there guys that interest you? Let's say they did move on from Joe. Are there guys that you would be making a call to if you're Duke Tobin?
Singletary, I think.
Devin Singletary.
Yes,
okay.
Devin Singletary, especially if it's a committee approach, which it should be, right? He doesn't need the bulk of the carries. When I say bulk, like 80%, you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't need to happen that way. So Chase Brown coupled with Singletary, maybe even someone deep in the draft, but I would love that.
Yeah, I think there's a theme here with me. I want to get cheaper, stay cheap at tight end, safety, running back, because you're going to spend more. Quarterback, obviously, wide receiver, defensive tackle. And so you're kind of like moving things around a bit, shuffling the deck and where you're allocating resources. You're obviously spending money at right tackle as well. At least I would. And so to me, I would move on from Joe. Whole outline. Like I said, I did a video earlier this week, but Zach Moss, 26 years old, he brought some pop to the Colts in that run game. And he's going under the radar right now because Derrick Henry is available. Austin Eckler is available. Saquon Barkley is available. All of these big name running backs are available. Tony Pollard, Josh Jacobs. And so guys with name recognition that are probably going to get paid. Meanwhile, you mentioned Devin Singletary, certainly someone they could go after. Maybe they go after DeAndre Swift. Maybe DeAndre Swift doesn't cost nearly as much as people are expecting because it's such a deep free agent class. And then to your point, the draft is there as well. And I think the draft is deeper at running back than a lot of people thought initially. One other name I'll throw out there, A.J. Dillon, certainly interesting. Yeah. But a guy that I think they should go after, will go after, it's a nice buy low, similar to Mekhi Becton, former first rounder, not getting a much playing time in Kansas City. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase's good buddy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's who I would sign. $1 million. I'm sure it gets done. And boom, Chase Brown, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a running back in the draft. I think you solve the Bengals running back issues, and it can be a committee, like you mentioned. Up next, and I mentioned it at the top of the show, Andrew, we get to laugh at our coworkers. That's right. You see how you chuckled? We are about to do that. We will hear from the Big Play Cleveland show coming up next. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. He's Andrew Fox Miller. I'm James Rapien, and well, now it's time to laugh at our friends up north because obviously we're in Cincinnati. We cover the Bengals daily on Cincinnati Bengals Talk, but we're part of the Big Play Network. And lo and behold, after the 2023 season ends, man, Super Bowl time for the Cleveland Browns, looking at the latest Tipico odds. And boy, oh boy, McNeil, Nick, you guys were on one. Here is a clip from their show about the Browns going to the Super Bowl.
The Browns opened as 40-1 on Tipico to win the Super Bowl, Chris. The same odds as teams like the Atlanta Falcons, and there was a lot of talk on social media.
Bears and the Chicago Bears.
Boom.
Come on, Nick.
They got slighted.
They don't even know what they're doing at quarterback right now. Yeah, I think the Browns did get slighted, but I'll tell you what, this is the first year in a long time where I'm going to put some money on that future, and it's not just going to be betting with my heart. There's going to be a little bit of my head in there too, because I think the Browns are legitimate right now, and I think they're legitimate contenders for next year.
Oh my goodness. Look, and they've moved since to 35-1. So it has moved down a little bit in the Browns' favor.
Okay.
The Bengals, by the way, 13-1. Come on, man. The Bears are going to get probably the top quarterback in this draft. The Bears are going to reload some, and they don't play in the AFC North.
That's the biggest thing to me. It's the division.
The Browns, meanwhile, have huge questions. They have huge questions at quarterback. Who is their quarterback? Are we sure Deshaun Watson's going to be able to throw at a high level?
Listen, James, there are certain guarantees.
Are we sure Joe Burrow right now, who's still recovering and not throwing, can't throw better than Deshaun? I'm sure he could. I saw that and I was like, all right, that's a bit too far. The Browns, I think they have a good roster and they do have the Bengals number, right? It's a rough matchup for them. They're not winning the Super Bowl. They're not doing that.
Place your bets, everybody. Place your.
Typical would love it.
Oh,
Typical
yeah.
would love it.
Get in on it.
Please.
Get in on it. You're that confident. Go for it. I mean, it sounds like they are going to, or they did at the time. So yeah, it's the. I mean, maybe if we're guilty of anything, maybe it's just calling out the fact that there were other teams that they were compared against. I get what the approach was, but Falcons is. I mean, come on, Panthers, Saints, everyone trying to figure this stuff out. Granted, Tampa Bay, sure, but what are we? Why are we comparing the Browns to the fact? What?
Well, what if the Falcons get Kirk Cousins?
Right.
What if they get Malik Neighbors and it's Cousins, Neighbors, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Jesse Bates in the back end of the second? Like it could completely change things. So yeah, I think it's a bit rich to look down at those teams if you're a fan of the Cleveland Browns, but it makes for an interesting offseason. And Typico, cash in that money from McNeil because, well, you're going to just pocket that stuff. Heart, head, doesn't matter. I don't buy it one bit. He is Andrew Fox Miller. I'm James Rapien. Make sure you join us every single Tuesday night at 8 Eastern on Cincinnati Bengals Talk and weekly on Bally Sports. For Andrew, I'm James. Thank you so much for watching. Enter the jungle.